This is the ugly truth about apartheid that you will probably not hear anywhere but right here. So whether you are white, you need to hear this. If you are a black South African, you need to absolutely hear this. You colored Indian, as long as you are a South African, you've got to hear this. So I advise you to stay till the end, because I'm going to do a quick biblical reaction at the end. But you're going to leave this video thinking differently than you ever have about apartheid. When you hear the word apartheid, especially for me as a black guy in South Africa, I guess when I hear the word apartheid, this is what I see in my head.
Now stop! Stop right there. This is an illegal gathering. I'm giving you 3 minutes to disperse. Go home. Go home. I'm warning you.
I'm not going to play that. Now, when this was happening, I lived in the township. The tear gas they were shooting, I know exactly how it smells, how it feels on your eyes, how it just disorients you. Because if this is passing your house, even if you're at home, when they shoot that, that smoke is going to get into the house. One moment, you're watching through a window if you're not in the march because too young. You're watching. Next moment, boom, the smoke hits you. You don't know what's happened. So that's what most of us think about apartheid. I imagine many of us in South Africa. And is this accurate? Not really, because apartheid is a 40-year-old, 48 to 94. It's a long period of time. So this is one of the rare days. That's why it's on video. What's the normal stuff? Well, going to work and things like that. People becoming lawyers like Tata Madiba, Oliver Tambo were lawyers. People leaving the township, getting in a train or taxi, or in my time, I guess we had cars already, driving to town and things like that. That was the day to day. So now, this is the part that South Africa deals with quite a lot, that's standing in our way. The average black person, like myself, was taught to kind of think, this is apartheid, therefore, who voted for this? White people were the only ones who voted, so they voted for this. Now, first of all, let me say this quickly. If any white person is 48 years old, they have never voted for apartheid because they were under 18 in 1994. Okay, but now if they are 51 years old, white South African, 69% chance is that they voted to end apartheid in 1992. If they're about 53 years old and older, it would mean that in 1989, they voted for F.W. de Klerk, who then released Mandela in 1990. But they're 53 years and up. 48% chance they voted de Klerk in. 30% chance they voted the Conservative Party, which was very concerned about what was happening with, because apartheid was already being taken down in soft ways without reversing the whole act, the whole edifice. And 20% chance they voted for the Democratic Party, which was saying, cut apartheid, reverse all the laws. The white South Africans who voted for apartheid, why did they vote for hatred and murder and oppression and all these horrible things? This is the ugly truth. They didn't. What? But apartheid was murderous and... Yes. But they didn't vote for that. What did they vote for? They voted for reasonable, well-explainable intentions. Listen to John Foster, Prime Minister, an apartheid Prime Minister, explaining what the government was doing.
Well, would you give me an example of something which would not be permitted to be said in the press so that we could have an idea of where you draw the line?
No, if one race is incited to act violently, to put it mildly, against another race, then certainly the government of the day must be entitled to take steps against it.
Well, suppose we reason a posteriori and ask you this. Have you in fact closed down any newspapers?
No.
So therefore this is simply a directive of sorts.
No, it was a timely warning.
A timely warning. But,
and whilst on the subject of newspapers, again, may I just remind you that it so happens that for each one newspaper supporting the cause of my government and my party, there are at least 10 who are violently against my party and its policies.
But not so violently as to cause an explosive situation.
Not at this stage, but I must watch the future.
Yes. Well, now, you're saying that you cannot justifiably call a state a police state into which people immigrate. Doesn't, of course...
And where you have free elections, as we have periodic free elections.
For white people.
For white people, and elections for the other peoples in their own countries.
He gets asked now specifically about apartheid because he says, yeah, they vote, and the American journalist says, but not black people or only white people. So let's hear him go on there.
And elections for the other peoples in their own countries.
Well, now the policy of separate development, as I understand it, has at this point evolved, roughly speaking, as follows, that about 14% of South Africa is reserved for the Bantustans.
It's not a question of being reserved for them. That is where the mistake is made all along the line. To interpret this situation, you must know something of the history.
Yes, I wish you'd tell us something about
this country and its people. It so happens that more or less, for all practical purposes, the time that the whites moved up from the Cape, the blacks moved down from the middle of Africa, and they settled certain portions of what is now the Republic of South Africa. The Xhosas settled the Transkei, the Zulus settled portions of Natal, the Tswanas settled portions of Western Transvaal, the Sothos settled portions of Northern Transvaal, the Vendas settled another portion of Northern Transvaal, and so I can go on. And they claimed certain land which to this day they still possess. So it wasn't a question that it was reserved for them. They settled that land and they've got it to this very day. But apart from that, and the whites settled the rest. But apart from the land that they initially settled, and which today is still their land, in 1936, the then United Party under the leadership of General Herzog as Prime Minister and General Smuts as Deputy Prime Minister. They passed a law that saying that in addition to that land which the black peoples originally settled, the whites at their expense should add 7.25 million morgen of land. And that land is still being bought up today. As a matter of fact, about a little over 6 million morgen of the 7.25 has already been bought, and we are now buying up the last remaining 1.25 million of morgen of land.
So your point is that historically, that land which is theirs continues to be theirs.
Continues to be theirs, and we didn't put them there and say to them, look, that is where you must live. They settled that land, and they picked that land, and let me say so, from an agricultural point of view and from a rainfall point of view, it is the best land in South Africa.
Well, but it is true that I think the figure is 2 million people have actually been moved, correct, during the past 15 years, told to go other than where they would like to be.
No, it's not only black people that have been moved. Whites are being moved as well. I've just tried to explain to you that whites have to evacuate no less than 7.25 million morgen of land. And blacks are put on that land.
Well, essentially...
Now, here's the point I want to make here. If you don't learn from history, you will repeat it. If you put yourself in the shoes of a white South African, listening to this man and deciding who to vote for, I know you want to play high and mighty and pretend I would have never voted for this. You wouldn't have, because you'd be coming from 2025. But if this is all you heard, you would have voted for this reasonable, rational man who makes sense. And there's a historic context. When we don't learn from history, we repeat it. See, black South Africans in South Africa are doing the same thing right now that white South Africans were doing in the 60s and 50s. Listening to things that sound reasonable, that have a historic context, yet that ignore. See, one of the problems that he can get around this is that journalists never get to ask you, is that right or wrong? Because they can't answer that. Is that good or bad? Is that leading to prosperity or poverty? Unfortunately, South Africans have been listening to the ANC, the EFF, the MK. They've also been using history to justify doing things that can only lead to poverty. And making little things like, no, but this, but that. No, it's not like that. No, we're not taking land by force. No, we're not taking it forcibly. Yes, but do you know that ever questioning property rights always leads to poverty? It is an economic principle that does not respect your history, that does not respect your current state. It's like gravity. No matter how you explain it, no matter how you can, explain and give history and whatever, jumping from the top of a building will break your knee, because gravity is not going to listen to your reasons for why you jumped.
Those who unfortunately have to vote with us on this matter are the beneficiaries of this crime against the African humanity, and they have the support of a coalition of some Africans who do not know the history of this country. The ANC is still in power, and the ANC has other instruments that it will use to ensure that the people of South Africa get access to the land.
The proposed amendment that states that land and any improvements on it may be expropriated with nil compensation is precisely the type of situation that will cause this uncertainty. This is not what the country needs now in the time of economic devastation during the COVID pandemic. It is therefore beyond belief that there was no socio-economic impact assessment done of this bill, and the bill itself states that there will be no financial implications. This is, to say the least, madness.
The EFF rejects this bill because it's a complete departure from the radical proposal that we've made. Ours remain and will never change. Expropriation of land without compensation, not even with nil compensation. We don't want compensation at all, and we want the state to be the custodian of the land.
Amending Section 25 of the Constitution to provide for the expropriation of land or property without compensation will make all property rights null and void. The erosion of property rights in South Africa will create uncertainty and will inevitably divert potential investment away from the country and will ultimately result in economic failure and collapse of South Africa.
As South Africa in 1994, we chose a path of a negotiated settlement, where land reform will go through a due process. Therefore, our policies on land reform must be transparent, must be on the just and equitable basis. There must be due process to arrive at nil compensation, and that is what the bill is doing. Due to land hunger, which is more pronounced in urban areas, due to rapid urbanization, the land must also be distributed to those who need it.
Like, are you aware that government has no spiritual authority to engage in business? So is it right for government people who keep speaking about some partnership and whatever, and I understand when it's infrastructure and you need that, but we're not there. We have government right there making up social engineering, deciding how many must go in there and in there. Is it right? Is BEE right? No, the history. Is it right? Is it right for one human being to play God over other human beings? Yeah, but I do know how it works because I study the scriptures. I could tell you what else could be done, but is it right? Does it lead to prosperity? Is it good? How come you have black people in South Africa mainly, and some liberal whites and Indians and coloreds? How come you have them who have seen that BEE is not good? It has produced a morally bankrupt country. How come they still voting for it? Because they are as deceived today as they were deceived back then. And for me, that says two things. Number one, it shifts you from the bitterness about apartheid against the whites who oppress us. Well, they didn't. They only voted, and then it's the politicians who pass laws, which when they were passed, nothing has happened. But as it built up, it ended up with the last thing I saw there. And here's the thing. When citizens are not informed, they will fall for politicians who just want to take maximum power to themselves. Politicians generally do not act in the favor of citizens. They act in their own favor. And it takes wisdom to be able to see through the garbage. I'll tell you the one sign for free. A politician who brings up history to justify policy is leading to oppression, bloodshed, poverty, and suffering. They've got to stick to principles of what is right, what is wrong, what is good, what is bad, and what brings prosperity or poverty. So this is the thing that, the ugly truth that no one ever talks about. See, this is what happens. There is a way that seems right to a man, but its end is the way of death. One of the things, especially with regards to the economy, which always falls in here, is when politicians tell you the intention of what they are doing. No, we're doing this because we seek to. We intend to. Intentions don't matter. It's incentives that matter, because incentives give consequences. Let me give you a quick example. If I came from a weird culture somewhere as a billionaire, and in the culture that I come from, if you want to insult someone, you give them 1,000 and walk away. And so I walk up to you based on my culture with the intention to insult you. I walk up to you, I give you 1,000 rands and I walk away. And my intention is to insult you. But the consequence is that I gave you 1,000. Are you going to reject that 1,000, or are you going to take that 1,000 and think, whoa, what a great guy? I promise you that every morning when I leave my house, I will find you waiting at the gate like a puppy dog, waiting for me to insult you. And I'll drive out and go and drive off. You will be early for that insult every day, because intentions don't matter. No, we are doing PE because we are trying to. Intentions don't matter. You are producing poverty. No, we've signed the Expropriation Act. Outside of all the lies they tell, like 72% of the land is in white hands. There's no such a thing anywhere in South Africa. Okay, no, we are doing the Expropriation Act because we intend to. Intentions don't matter. No one eats intentions. No one works at an intention. No one grows their business at an intention. Intentions don't matter. John Foster said, no, we are separating people because we want to limit friction between the races. Guess what? White South Africans fell for it. That sounds like a good intention. And they didn't have my video to ask them, does government have spiritual authority to move people? No, they don't. What do they have authority to do? To punish evil. So how do you deal with that friction? Well, then arrest the ones who get involved in assaults. But you leave people alone because you are not God. You don't have the right to move people around like animals. But you see, they fell for it back then. Stop falling for it now. What the comrades, all the Marxists, the Marxists and the revolutionaries are saying are wicked words that will lead to poverty, suffering, bloodshed, and people perish for lack of knowledge. Black South Africans, you are right now doing what the white South Africans did in the 60s. And what is that? You fell for smooth words that declared good intentions, and because of ignorance voted for suffering, for poverty, for struggle. No man can serve two masters. Either he will love the one and hate the other, or he will respect the one and disrespect the other. You cannot serve God and Marx. Boy, I told you today, didn't I? If you like what I said, press like. If you like or don't like what I said, let me hear it in the comments. But either way, cling, cling, before you go, ring that bell so you catch the next one. Let's make history together. See you in the comments.